Now.
It's the Bert and Ernie cake row. It's the gay cake row. It's heading for court. But should a bakery run by Christians have a right to say no to a customer wanting a cake with a pro-gay message? Here's the number: 08459 555 678. The hospital waiting list time bomb. We revealed details last night. Now we're already hearing your stories coming through to the programme of some of you who are on the waiting lists. Here's the number, one more time: 08459 555 678.
The biggest show in the country. The Stephen Nolan Show.
So the gay cake row rumbles on. It's all kicked off over the summer after a local baker refused to make a cake with a gay slogan. Aisher's Baking Company said it had declined the request because it was at odds with its Christian beliefs. Now the Equality Commission has confirmed it's taking legal action against the bakery. Daniel McArthur is the company's general manager.
We're very surprised that they're still pursuing us with threats of legal action, and that they're still demanding that we provide some form of compensation for their client. We feel that the Equality Commission are pursuing us because of our beliefs that marriage is between a man and a woman. It feels like a David and Goliath battle, because on one hand we have the Equality Commission, who are a public body. They're funded by taxpayers' money. They have massive resources at their disposal, whereas we are a small family business and we have limited resources at our disposal. We responded to the Equality Commission's initial letter threatening legal action, and it seems now, 4 months later, they're determined to punish us for our beliefs and our views.
Well, the Rainbow Project's John O'Doherty is with us this morning, as is the TUV leader, Jim McAllister. John, good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen.
What are your thoughts? Going boogaloo on the phones already about this, I've got to say. Here we go again.
I think it's very disappointing, Stephen, that we are dealing with this issue again and that the parties couldn't come to a remedy on this issue. The unfortunate position that we're in is we have a victim who's going forward to the Equality Commission who firmly believes that they've experienced discrimination on their basis of their sexual orientation. We have a company who believe that they've not discriminated. The parties couldn't come to a remedy, and unfortunately the next stage of that is to go to court, and I think that's really disappointing. And I think, we're dealing with this now. We dealt with it 4 months ago, and we're going to be dealing with this in 3 years' time, because this case isn't going to go away fast. If the outcome of the initial case is going to be in reference to the complainant, it will be appealed, and it will be appealed in every court possible, and we'll be dealing with this issue for years to come. And unfortunately, the impact of that's going to be is continuous impact on community relations.
What's unfortunate about it would at least establish where the law stands, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it's important to be clear about that as well, Stephen, is that the Equality Commission have stated that their reason for taking this case is to identify what are the limits of this law. It's not because they clearly believe that, yes, 100% this is discrimination. They're saying, we believe it's discrimination, but we don't know whether or not it's unlawful. And that's the point of taking this case forward. It isn't David and Goliath type situation. It's a situation where they're testing the limits of the law. I think when we do look at testing the law, I think we have to look at the wider impact of that. And the wider impact of that is going to be is continuous damaged community relations between people of different faiths and people of minority sexual orientations.
Okay, well, Jim McAllister, we'll come to you in just a second. The DP's Nigel Dodds with us this morning as well. Good morning to you, Nigel.
Morning, Stephen.
I'll tell you the really interesting part for me here. We have a statement from the Equality Commission, and within that statement, listen to this is fascinating actually. It says, this case raises issues of public importance regarding the extent to which suppliers of goods and services can refuse service on grounds of sexual orientation, religious belief and political opinion. Now, you see, it's the political opinion bit in there that's really interesting. So maybe this has moved on from, you're not allowed to refuse a cake if it's promoting gay marriage, to political opinion. You can't object because of your political opinion either. And that's really interesting territory in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is very interesting the way in which this case, which started off on the grounds of a complaint that this was somehow against some kind of sexual orientation, discrimination type case. Now it has moved on. The Equality Commission are now talking that, as well as discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation, but they're now also alleging 4 months later, having spent a lot of money on this, taken senior counsel's advice, even though they didn't take it initially, that it's now a case of sexual orientation, religion and politics.
Yeah.
I mean, this does beggar belief. I mean, we have here...
But that's the law, Nigel, is it not?
Well, it's not the... I mean, the position is it's the Equality Commission's determination in relation to their interpretation of what they think the law might be. I mean, we have a situation here where a company which is out there fighting hard in the current hard economic climate, keeping people employed, over a cake worth £36.50, are being harassed, bullied, punished, pursued by the mighty battalion of the Equality Commission, spending your money and my money, pursuing a quite ridiculous case. I mean,
but it's the principle. It's not the cost of the cake, is it? Now, come on. You know it's not. They're trying to establish a principle that you cannot discriminate based on someone's sexual orientation, religious belief, or political opinion.
They're going out of their way to punish and harass and bully a company which is desperately trying to make its way and employ people in a very difficult economic climate. And they're doing it, it seems to me, firing all guns at it, not just on the grounds of sexual orientation discrimination, but now politics and religion.
But would it not?
Let's examine the facts of it.
Yeah, but Nigel, hold on, because you've got a legal mind, as do you, Jim Alistair, which is why I want to talk to both of you today. But would it not be your opinion already that it is unlawful to discriminate against someone based on their political opinion? You cannot withhold goods and services to anyone based on their political opinion. You can't do it. You would agree with that, would you not?
Yeah, two things, Stephen. Two things. One, the person who went in to order this cake is not being discriminated against because whether they were gay, straight, Protestant, Catholic, Muslim, whatever religion, the company's position was that they weren't prepared to manufacture a cake with this slogan on it. So there was no discrimination on the grounds of religion or politics or anything else against the person ordering the goods. Neither was the person being denied the right to have the goods because they could go elsewhere. It's not like a government department where if you don't get the service, you don't get it anywhere. They could get it somewhere else. So on both of those grounds, there was no discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation, politics, or religion. And that is what is fundamental here. Whether the person was a Muslim, a gay person, a straight person, a Protestant, Catholic, whatever, it didn't matter to that company. So there was no discrimination against the person. Their view was that they weren't prepared, just as they wouldn't be prepared to print a slogan cake glorifying the gory murders of ISIS or some Islamist extremist organisation. I'm not comparing the two slogans, but I'm saying that's an example. How far would this equality go? If it actually takes its own logic to its logical conclusion, then it would have to pursue companies refuse to have that kind of slogan. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely scandalous.
John O'Doherty?
It is a waste of money, and I think it's to see it for what it is.
I think it's a very polarising issue, Stephen, and I think that really gets back to the point that I'm trying to make is, this is being brought forward as a case of public importance. But I think there's a wider public importance here, which is around good relations, which is around actually addressing the root causes of issues like this within our society. And I think, unfortunately, because this is such a polarising issue, because it gets so much media attention, that the actual impact of this is negative in everything that we're trying to achieve. I think it's great that Nigel is so clear in what the legislation actually says. I think there are many of us who aren't as clear, and I'm not a spokesperson for the Equality Commission, but their point of bringing forward this case is to identify what are the limits.
So do you support the Equality Commission spending money bringing this forward, or do you think it's harassing a company?
I think that's a very hard call. I think the ultimate aim here would have been for the two parties to come to a remedy. But unfortunately, when you get to a situation like this where you've got people in polar opposites of whether or not discrimination is actually taking place, someone has to rule on that. And the unfortunate situation is that the only remedy is a judge and a court of law to identify whether or not. And, the Equality Commission have a rule here. They've decided to provide representation to the complainant in this case. But if they had not, the complainant was still in a position to take a civil case on their own in this matter. So I think that regardless of the Equality Commission's involvement, it's something that would have likely ended up in court anyway.
Jim Alistair, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is a quite shameful incident on the part of the Equality Commission of persecution of freedom of conscience. The juice is quite straightforward. That if the bakery had refused service to someone because of their sexual orientation, that under the current law would obviously be discrimination. That is not the case. They found objectionable. And that is where the issue of conscience comes into it.
Yeah, but the Equality Commission are saying that the ground has shifted, Jim, to political opinion. That's the point. It's shifted to political opinion, Jim, according to the bakery.
Yes, but just hear me out. To draw it in that direction. Is that to say that if someone came into that bakery and said, I want to buy a cake, and I want you to put on it up the provost, or up the UDA, or up someone else, that a baker could not say, sorry, in conscience, I will not do that.
Well, and that, yeah, and but you're putting your finger on it, Jim, because that's exactly what the question I'm asking this morning, which is why I think this case now becomes even more interesting. For example, and you've touched upon this. So if someone goes into Aisha's Bakery or any other, and let's take another example, and says, right, I want a cake made in dedication to the hunger strikers in Northern Ireland, okay? Now, if the bakery says, no, I'm not doing it, well, that would be the bakery using their political opinion, wouldn't it, to refuse that service? Is the Equality Commission going to now argue?
That's I think where you're wrong, Stephen. That would be the bakery using their conscience to say, we're not discriminating against you because of your political opinion. We'll sell you a cake irrespective of your political opinion. But we are refusing in conscience to put a slogan on it, such as, support for paedophilia, support for the provisional IRA, support for something else that offends their conscience. That is where the line has been crossed by the Equality Commission in trying to stretch this law beyond where I believe it was intended to go. And I think that's why I said it amounts to a persecution of conscience by the Equality Commission, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves.
Nigel Dodds, let's go more on the political opinion aspect of this, which Aisha says this case has now moved on to. If you walked into a printer's, Nigel Dodds, and you said, right, you want leaflets printed for the DUP, if that printer said, sorry, I'm a TUV man, I've got posters of Jim Allister in my bedroom, get out, would you not be aggrieved?
Yeah, I'm sure a printer would be keen enough to print our posters and leaflets.
No, but if they weren't, Nigel, if they weren't, that's the point, and it was their political opinion, would you think that should be unlawful?
Yeah, well, look, I think this is where we're getting into the realms of the ridiculous here as far as equality.
It's actually right on. It's right on the point, isn't it? Just answer that question for me, Nigel.
I'm not. I mean, you're drawing out how ridiculous this could all be. If the Equality Commission is right, if they're saying that this is not just a matter of, which I don't agree with, for the reasons that I've already set out, that the person who came into the shop could order a cake of any kind, they weren't being discriminated against on the grounds of religion, politics, or their sexual orientation. It was simply because the bakers would not print this slogan on this cake because of their conscience. But we're now being told by the Equality Commission that in those sorts of circumstances, the circumstances you've outlined in relation to printing or the baking of a cake or whatever, the Equality Commission are now trying to allege that would be discrimination in relation to politics, religion, and sexual orientation, perhaps. So the whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. The point about it, too, is that in alleging political discrimination, even on their own terms, what they seem to be saying is that it's a valid political opinion to promote same-sex marriage or whatever. It could be something else, but in this case it's same-sex marriage. But what about then the political opinions of someone else who believes, and it's perfectly legitimate, and indeed it's been upheld by the Northern Ireland Assembly in free votes on a number of occasions, the perfectly sensible political view that marriage is actually a traditional the traditional view of marriage, which is that it's between a man and a woman. Is that not an equally valid political opinion? So the Equality Commission are getting themselves into serious difficulties by overstepping the mark and wasting our money and your money, public money, at a very difficult time in pursuing a company which is trying to provide employment and provide a service to people in the local community. And I think the whole thing will be seen for what it is. It's another example of political correctness gone massively wrong, and I think that it also points up.
This is the body funded by Peter Robinson and Mark. This is the body funded by the Office of First and Deputy First Minister.
Well, I mean, there's lots of bodies out there that are funded by the public purse, including the police, and indeed the BBC is funded through the public purse as well, Stephen. And I don't agree with everything the police, the BBC, or the Equality Commission do, and either.
Can you just answer the question for me, though, Nigel and Jim? I'll ask you the same question. If you walked into a printer's, Nigel, and you wanted DUP leaflets printed by that printer, and they told you to get out, do you think that they should be within their rights to do that within the law, or do you think that the law, as it says, you cannot discriminate on the basis of political opinion, goods or services? Do you think that you should have that protection?
People should be protected in the provision of goods and services where it breaches their religious freedom and their conscience. I mean, that's the bottom line here. I mean, I don't think in any serious conversation or consideration of this matter that those kinds of deals, barters, trades, discussions, negotiations go on all the time. What does an ordinary sensible person do? If they find that they go and somebody doesn't want to print their stuff, they go somewhere else and get it printed. I mean, there's no big deal on it. But here we have a case where somebody is being pursued because, and I mean, you actually think of the morality of this. Somebody's been ground into submission by the big battalions of the Equality Commission and the person who stands behind him who's pursuing this case. To take money from them because of legal representation that they will need, to put them under severe pressure, all because, not that they couldn't get the cake, they can go elsewhere, they can get it somewhere else, but because they wouldn't provide it for them, and they want them to go against their conscience. I think it's totally reprehensible. Yeah, but
Jim Alistair, it's not the point that they can go somewhere else, is it? Because what the law is trying to establish here is that whether it is lawful, whether this is a form of discrimination.
This is the Equality Commission trying to expand beyond its natural ambit the existing legislation, trying to push the boundaries on it. I think the existing legislation is very clear that you cannot discriminate against someone on a variety of grounds, be it their political, religious opinion, or their gender, or their racial background, or their sexual orientation. And there was no discrimination, I contend, in this case, on the basis of sexual orientation, because there was no refusal per se to say we do not serve gay people. There was a refusal on a basis of conscience to accommodate a demand that a cake should contain something on its cover which offended the conscience of those who were asked to produce it. And there is a matter of freedom of conscience and freedom of religion which has to be balanced. And it seems to me that the Equality Commission are now in the business of persecuting freedom of conscience.
And if you, Jim, it's a similar question to you, Jim, as I asked Nigel. So if you were chased out of a printer's who said, don't like the TUV, get out of here, we're not printing your stuff. If you went to get on a public service, I don't know if you do buses, if you went to get on a bus or get into a taxi and they said, you're the leader of the TUV, get out, can't stand your politics, get out. Do you think that should be unlawful?
That would be them discriminating against me because of my politics being obvious.
Precisely.
That would be the same. Sorry, no, that's the same as Asher saying, get out of our shop, we don't serve gays. That's different. This is a situation where...
No, political opinion. Asher's your sense about political opinion, Jim. That's the point. Political opinion.
No. This isn't
they oppose gay marriage, you see. They will not bake a cake of a slogan supporting gay marriage. So they will not bake a cake supporting the political opinion that gay marriage should be tolerated.
And
that's the political point here, isn't it? That's the political opinion territory.
They won't quite correctly do that on the basis of their own conscience, which no law, no court can remove from any human being. You're entitled to your freedom of conscience and to your freedom of religion. And if we've reached the stage in this country where the courts of the land are going to say, you have no freedom of conscience, you have no freedom of religion, and we're in a very sad situation.
But what, Jim?
I don't believe that the courts...
But help me understand the difference, Jim. So help me understand the difference between someone walking in and asking for a cake that promotes gay marriage and you walking into a bakery and saying that you want a cake promoting, I don't know, you want a cake promoting your stance against water rates in Northern Ireland. What is the difference?
The difference is that one quite properly is capable of testing one's conscience and freedom of religion. The other is not. To talk about rates does not raise an issue, serious issue of freedom of religion or conscience, but to talk about the promotion of a gay marriage, as it's called.
It's a political opinion.
No, but it crosses a line which impedes upon freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. And that is the issue that the courts need to adjudicate on, and to throw this case back at the Equality Commission, who are wasting everyone's money needlessly. After the hest, of course, of a complainant, the complainant can't stand back and say, oh, this isn't my doing. This is the complainant's doing. The complainant has brought this case through the Equality Commission and is insisting on that. So it is their case, and they are the ones who, with the aid and abetting of the Equality Commission, are keeping this pot being stirred.
Okay. Jim Alistair, thank you very much indeed. Nigel Dodds, thank you. Morning to you and to you, John O'Doherty. 08459 555 678. Jim and Rich Hill. Morning, Jim.
Morning, Stephen. You were asking there for help in understanding the situation.
Yes.
Well, I think it's a matter of this. The bakery was willing to bake the cake, and maybe do bake cakes for homosexualities. It's the actual slogan they didn't agree with. So the man wasn't being discriminated against. He could come there and get the cake. They'll bake him the cake, but they didn't want to put on that slogan. So and John O'Doherty is talking about discrimination. So I think the Christians have been discriminated against. This discrimination and equality thing is a tag of convenience. There's no equality because the Christians have no right to their conscience, they've no right to their belief, and they've no right to so the whole thing, has been censored. It wouldn't be tolerated at all in any country, Stephen, and that's the difference. This guy wasn't being discriminated against. He could buy the cake, and he could maybe walk in there.
But he couldn't buy the cake with a slogan on it he wanted.
Yes, but he could buy the cake, but so the man was willing to give him the service of baking him the cake, but not the... I would have loved, my ambition would be to have a B&B, but I had to drop the whole idea because I know I would be taken to court by not being able to...
Stay there, Jim. David in Belfast, you can talk to Jim this morning. Go ahead.
Good morning, Stephen. Well, the way I look at this situation is are we really saying in Northern Ireland, if you're a Christian, and I'm not a Christian, but say you're a Christian, you're running a business, are we really saying in Northern Ireland, well, the next Muslim that comes in through the door, I can't serve you? And a black man walks into the door, I can't serve you, the colour of your skin's wrong. When do we really wake up and understand that you cannot discriminate against people on their sexual orientation, the colour of their skin, or where they come from? We're coming back toward the days of South Africa here. We really do need to wake up to where we're going. We need to say to people, no matter what you are or who you are, if you're providing a service, you do precisely as the customer asks. Simple.
What's your response to that, Jim?
I think that's the man's... He's talking about going back to South Africa or going back to any African... There's a lot of African countries who would have the same stance as this Christian bakery. And, there's lots of African countries...
Well, we're not talking about African countries, are we? We're talking about here...
He's talking about it. He's the one...
No, but we don't need to talk about African countries to take his point this morning, Jim, which is, when's the discrimination going to stop? Do you not want Northern Ireland to be an equal place?
The people has not been discriminated against regarding of the colour of their skin. I would condemn that, and I would condemn that altogether. But you're entitled to have a conscience. And as you asked Jim Alistair if he walked into printers and the printer says, no, I'm not printing your leaflets. Well, I would walk out to the printers and say, OK, I'll go in somewhere else.
But Jim didn't say that. If you listen, when I put the question to both Nigel Dodds and Jim Alistair, that if they were wanting political leaflets printed and a printer told them, get out, we don't like your politics, neither of the two of them agreed that the printer should be allowed to do that. If you listen very carefully, neither of the two of them conceded that they would tolerate that.
I don't see them that they would actually prosecute the man. Everybody, including that fella, the other guy on the phone, is entitled to his conscience. A Christian is entitled to their conscience. I don't believe in homosexual marriage, but I tolerate it. I have to.
So imagine if you've got, I don't know, imagine if you've got Jim Allister and he was, I don't know if Jim takes a drink. Does Jim take a drink? I have no idea if he takes a drink. Let's say Jim had a peach schnapps and he couldn't drive, and he went to get into a taxi, and the taxi driver said, "What? You're the leader of the TUV? Get out! I'm not driving you. Don't like your politics." Does Jim think that taxi drivers and taxi companies should be allowed to do that? You see, once you start discriminating against someone on the basis of their political opinion, Jim, then where does it go next? That's the point.
Yep. Here, there's a Christian.
By the way, I don't think Jim does drink, so it's maybe a stupid example, but you take my point.
Well, I see your point, but McDavid getting down now a taxi. But here, the Christians are being discriminated against because they're not allowed to have a conscience and not allowed to say we don't agree with that, but we'll tolerate it, but we don't agree with it. You know, where is the discrimination ending? You know,
Stephen,
the Christians have been discriminated against.
Stephen, he talks about Christians being discriminated against. Gay people in this Northern Ireland are discriminated on every single day of the week. And at the end of the day, all the bakery had to do was bake the cake. If you're providing a service, you do what the customer asks.
Or all the gay guy had to do was go to another shop.
But why should? Whether the situation is, if a black person walked in, would they turn around and say to him or her, "Well, I'm sorry, you can't come here"? We're in a very dangerous situation here.
It's a different issue. This was about a political opinion, not the person's identity. That's what I'm trying to get home to you this morning. This case is now really, really interesting because it's not about just someone's identity. It's about their political opinion. That's the point of this story today. It's why it's a great story, this, for us all to discuss this morning, and let's do so. Every line into the building is currently jammed. So it's a big, big reactive story this morning. 08459 555 678. We'll take more of your calls after the news. It's 9:30.
Good morning, Stephen. As we've been hearing, the Equality Commission has confirmed that it will be starting civil proceedings against a Christian-run Belfast bakery which refused to bake a cake with a slogan supporting gay marriage. The owners of Asher's had been warned that it could face a discrimination case if it didn't acknowledge it had breached equality laws. The body that runs government elections in Northern Ireland has said it started recruiting staff for the 2015 general election count and has promised to deliver an overnight result. The office has been criticised in the past for slow counts by an independent watchdog. 1,500 counters and 3,500 polling staff will be recruited. And the drummer with the Australian rock band AC/DC, Phil Rudd, has been charged in New Zealand with plotting to try and have 2 people murdered. Rudd, who's 60, is also accused of threatening to kill and possessing drugs. Those are the headlines. More from me at 10.
Loads you on our Twitter feed today, at Stephen Nolan on Twitter. Matt says Asher's Bakery would have baked the cake if the customer agreed to change the message. It's a simple solution. Michael says, are the bakery imposing the same conditions on heterosexual customers? If not, it's discrimination. Peter says, Nolan, you're twisting this to suit you and your show's agenda. The bakers didn't refuse to serve the homosexual man. Get it? Says Peter this morning. Robert in Belfast. Morning, Robert.
Good morning, Stephen. You're drawing all kinds of analogies and all types of parallels.
Yes.
But they don't relate to the situation.
Of course they do.
No, I never thought I would agree with Jim Allister or Nigel Dodd, but I do, and more power to them. This is a matter of conscience, a matter of rights of conscience. Look, for Christians, what about my rights? I'm a Christian. What about my rights? I believe in the gospel. I believe that God created man and woman. He created marriage too in the institution when he said that man would leave his family and cleave to his wife.
And you can have that. And you can have that belief, Robert.
We're having it taken from us, and those two shall be one. And the instruction from God was to increase, multiply, and fill the earth.
But Robert,
that's what marriage is about.
Robert, here's the point: you can have that belief, but the question is, are you allowed to discriminate against people who do not share your beliefs?
You don't have to discriminate. An act of conscience is not a discrimination.
Okay, so let me give you another analogy, right? Peter Robinson is driving up to the gates of Stormont, and the guy that opens the barrier does not. His political opinion is that the DUP are a waste of space, and he says, "I'm not letting you in today. Sorry, I'm not opening the barrier today. Might be my job to let people in, but I don't like your political stance, so you're not getting into Stormont today. I'm not opening the barrier." Should he be allowed to do so?
your analogy is too remote from the reality of the situation.
Why?
It's too remote. You're drawing every single.
But tell me why. If you can start to say the printing of a statement, Robert, supporting gay marriage is the printing of a political statement. Promoting gay marriage. That is a political opinion. The bakery refused to print the political opinion. They said they were not discriminating against the man based on his sexuality. It was their political opinion. So if they're saying we don't like your political opinion, therefore we're not printing the label, what's the difference in a security guard at Stormont saying, sorry, Peter Robinson, you're not getting in. I don't like your political opinion.
There's a vast.
What is it?
There's a vast difference. With regard to the cake, they didn't put the images on the cake because it was not in keeping with what they believe themselves that they should do as of right. They had the right to do it. The other matter is not related at all.
Why does the security guard not have the right not to open the barrier?
Because that's not his job. His job is to admit these people when he knows them, irrespective of what they are. There's no relationship.
Is it not the bakery's job to print a cake, irrespective of who someone is?
Not at all. It's a matter of conscience. I mean, I'm a Christian. Are you trying to take my rights away from me altogether?
Let me
tell you this. I have to say, I think Ashers are being hung out to dry. And they're going to be dragged through the High Court. They're going to finish up in the European courts, and they're going to be hammered financially. I tell you something. I'm asking the Christian community to support them financially.
Let me let Stephen speak to you this morning. Go ahead, Stephen.
Good morning.
Say good morning to Robert.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Good morning.
People need to understand that you can have your personal belief, and whether it be a personal religious belief, a personal political belief, but what you can't do is enforce it in a public service. If a bus driver said, no, you're not getting on my bus, I don't agree with their personal opinion. If somebody walks in the coffee chain on the high street and they say, no, not serving you, don't agree with your personal political opinion, or somebody went into Tesco's or Asda or Sainsbury's or anywhere, there'd be absolute uproar, Robert.
You're attempting to take my right of conscious decision with regard to my faith away from me because you want the. Can I speak now? I give you a moment to speak. You want your institution of marriage and the manner in which you believe it is against something that I don't agree with. That means to say, I don't hate you and I don't have any difficulty with you at all. I respect you in absolutely every way. I just say you cannot have marriage because that's for man and woman and children. That's what I believe. That's what God created. And I believe that.
We're not getting into the gay marriage debate this morning. We're getting into whether companies should have to provide the same goods and services to people, no matter what their sexuality is or their political opinion.
Stephen, you're getting away from what's called in law remoteness of damage. Your arguments are too far from the reality of the fact.
Explain to me, because I have no notion what remoteness of damage means. Tell me what that means.
Well, you know everything else.
Tell me what it means.
Yeah, well, it means quite simply that if, say, for example, you have an accident and you get hurt and you begin to string everything else against the accident in order to get your point, i.e. make more money. And the court will say, oh, you can't claim that. That's too far from the reality of the thing. Because you bumped your head, you're claiming Alzheimer's.
Sarah on Twitter this morning, Robert, says the following. A more comparable situation, Stephen, is if a hotel refused to host a private function for a political party. Should they be allowed to do it?
Yes, of course they should. It's a matter of conscience. They do not believe what it's about, and they have that right. They have that. The gay people have that right. They're asking for everything that they want. There are certain things they can't have. There are certain things I can't have.
Robert, if somebody went to Asher's Bakery and asked for a cake for a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, which is obviously not in keeping with the Christian religion, but is in keeping with the Jewish religion, do you think they'd be entitled to refuse that? Because
yes, absolutely. And if I went to a Muslim bakery and I asked for a cake with a cross on the top of it and possibly bacon or something, and they refused, they would have the right to do it. It would be offensive to them, offend their conscience. You cannot do it. Listen, look. Let me tell you something.
You have to be able to be.
Let me tell you something. Freedom. Rights bring responsibilities. When you have a right, you have to be responsible. You have to exercise it right. You just can't go clawing everything down in this society because you think that you're right. You can be dead right.
Yeah, but rights do have responsibilities. Peter Robinson, we know that his personal belief is not in keeping with equal marriage or with gay equality to an extent, but he still funds gay pride. He still has that responsibility to provide a service and to provide equality for the LGBT community. That is taking the responsibility. You're stretching that way away from what...
No, I'm not. No, I'm dealing exactly with the issue at point. You're trying to take away my rights as a Christian. You're trying to force it down my throat that gay marriage it has the same equality as the heterosexual marriage, and it doesn't have. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a biological fact. I mean, can you not even see that? It produces no life. So how can you claim a marriage? How can you claim to be married? And then all this nonsense about you want it on a cake and you're going to destroy a firm because they have a Christian conscience because you can't have your way.
Well, it's not going to destroy a firm, and to be honest, you may have your view on equal marriage, and you're completely entitled to that, and that's absolutely fine. Other people have their view, and it will end up in the same way that it has with England and with Scotland. The people will speak.
I'll tell you something too. The Christian community will speak here. We will back Ashers, and I can say that with a clear conscience. Ashers will be backed financially.
The Fair Employment, I'm just looking through some of the legislation here. The Fair Employment and Treatment Northern Ireland Order 1998, right? This is what this is based upon, what the Equality Commission are basing their stance upon. And it says the following, I'll not read it all, but it says discrimination in provision of goods, facilities or services. It says, it is unlawful for any person connected with a provision, that's for payment or not, of goods, facilities or services to the public or a section of the public to discriminate against a person who seeks to obtain or use those goods, facilities or services by A, refusing or deliberately omitting to provide him with any of them, or by refusing or deliberately omitting to provide him with goods, facilities or services of the same quality, in the same manner, on the same terms as are normal in his case in relation to other members of the public or to other members of that section. 2. The following are examples of the facilities and services mentioned in the above paragraph. 1. Access to and use of any place which members of the public are permitted to enter. Accommodation in a hotel, boarding house or other similar establishment. These are all examples. Facilities by way of banking or insurance or for grants, loans, credit or finance. Facilities for training. Facilities for entertainment, recreation or refreshment, facilities for transport or travel, the services of any provision, trade or business or any local or other public authority. So that's in essence the legislation that this is being based upon. Let me go to the other Robert now. Morning to you, Robert. Go ahead, Robert.
Morning, Stephen. I just made the point to one of your people there about early on business. I decided that as a Christian, I wasn't going to do work for firms to supply alcohol to whatever outlets because of my conscience and also the fact my father was an alcoholic. I seen what alcohol did to him, and I wasn't going to promote anybody's business in any shape or form that was going to help do the same to other people. So, as a matter of conscience, I decided I wouldn't do that.
And have you ever got into trouble for it?
Never.
You see, that's not a political opinion, though. You know, if you're not serving alcohol, well, actually, it's your religious opinion, isn't it?
Well, it is a religious belief, and I believe, if the law said that you must supply goods to these people, rather than obey the law, I would obey my conscience as a Christian because it's better to obey God rather than laws of men.
See, have you ever been asked to provide the service? So you're
early on my days, yes, and I know other Christian firms that were builders who wouldn't build premises for alcoholic outlets, because of their conscience as well. And I believe what's happening is,
I'm not sure you're allowed to do that.
Probably not, but as I said before, I would rather obey my conscience and obey God rather than obey the laws of men. And I feel that the way ushers are being treated, we're getting back to the days when people were put to stake for their conscious beliefs. Are we getting back to those days where people are going to be persecuted because you're a Christian rather than obey the laws of men? It's better to obey God's laws.
Yeah, but is your personal conscience really compromised if you provide a service to someone who you disagree with?
Yes, because if I was supplying goods to a firm that was supplying alcohol, and I had a personal experience of what alcohol did to my father, and I've heard, look at that lady who was on yesterday. Her child was born deformed because of her alcohol abuse, as whenever she was pregnant. If I was supplying alcohol to her, I would feel partly responsible, for that, because I'm going against my conscience. I know that that's a drug that's doing people harm, and I'm supplying it, as a matter of conscience, I couldn't do it, couldn't live with myself.
You then look at the Equality Commission, and this is what Nigel Dodds and Jim Allister, both the TV and the GP, were talking about this morning. You look at the Equality Commission, which is funded by the taxpayer, Robert, and you ask yourself, is this really a good use of taxpayers' money for them to spend presumably many, many thousands of your pounds, of taxpayers' pounds, pursuing a legal case which is over a 30-odd quid cake?
I think it's a waste of money, and I feel that there's someone there has an axe to grind with Christians, and that's what really it's about. They're going to take it to limits to put these Christians to the sword.
But you see, of course, the interesting point about your last statement, Robert, and they would, of course, deny that they had an axe to grind against Christians. But if anybody in the Equality Commission did have an axe to grind against Christians, the irony is that would be unlawful, because you would be protected as a Christian from them doing that. It would be unlawful for them to discriminate against you because of your religious opinion, and you would want legislation protecting you, wouldn't you?
Well, if that's the case, then why are they pursuing ushers for what they believe is a matter of conscience? They're not being protected.
Well, that's a very good question. And again, this taxpayer-funded body, they have released a statement, and yet they've said at the end of their statement, the Commission will be issuing a civil bill in this case, and the decision as to whether or not discrimination has occurred will be a matter for the court. The Commission will not be making further comment on the facts or issues in the case before a court hearing. So the Equality Commission are not participating in the public discussion, but they're using public money to exist. The Equality Commission are using public money to be employed, and the Equality Commission are using public money to pursue this case through the courts.
Well, Stephen, if it was a case of that they were taking a case unfairly against ushers and they were being personally surcharged for a waste of public money, they would think twice about what they're doing, because we've had instances like that there where councillors, and I'm from Craigavon, where councillors were surcharged for making a decision that was wrong, that they felt was their conscious decision to make.
Yeah.
But they were surcharged. If those people in those public bodies were being surcharged for making for victimising people that that were just working on freedom of conscience, they would think twice about what they're doing.
The Equality Commission would say they're victimising no one, of course, that what their job is to make sure that, to test the law, to make sure that there is equality in Northern Ireland, and if there are instances in which they feel that may not have happened, that it's for the courts to test it. That's exactly what the Equality Commission would say that they exist for. They're also pointing out in their statement that they would have preferred not to have to litigate on these issues, and they sought an acknowledgement that there has been an unlawful breach of the equality laws and an assurance that this will not be repeated. So they tried to keep this out of court, they argue, and it's only because the Ishers didn't say sorry that this is now going to court.
Why should they say sorry for something they believe in and what they did was right? There's no way. If I was in that same position, I wouldn't apologise for doing something which I thought was right. Like Gregory Campbell yesterday said he wouldn't apologise for his comments. Right? So
the curry my yogurt stuff.
Yeah, if someone believes as an act of freedom of conscience or civil and religious liberty for all men, it's a right to speak your mind and to sort of do what you believe is right. Why should the law persecute you for it? We're getting back to the dark days when people.
Well, what a story this is, because from the moment we've come on air this morning at exactly 9:02, every single phone line into this building has been jammed for the whole of the show so far. So you all clearly want to talk about this. Brenda's next. Morning to you, Brenda.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Brenda.
The only thing this morning that makes me think it's not April Fool's Day is the weather, because this is a complete joke.
What's a complete joke?
I was saying to your researcher, right, I make stuff for people all the time.
Yes.
Mascots and all the rest.
You make what?
I make football mascots, all sorts of mascots.
Football mascots?
Yes, dolls and things. I knit them, but
right.
I wouldn't...
Could you knit me a Man United scarf?
Certainly, yes, no problem. I'll send it to you.
Please do. I'll not pay you. I'll get Vinny to pay you.
I'll send it to you. Don't be worried. You'll love it. But anyway, on the subject, I would not knit anything for anybody if I didn't like what... I would knit it for them, certainly I would, but they'd have to put their own slogans on it. And that's the way it is. I would knit the doll, and they could do what they like with it after that, but I wouldn't put anything on that I didn't agree.
There's Father Tim Bartlett now from the Catholic Church. He's contacted the Nolan Show to say the following. I'll be writing today to those groups from the gay community with whom I've had a very constructive and ongoing engagement in recent years to say that I am withdrawing my engagement until the right of all people, in this case Christians, to freedom of conscience is vindicated and respected by the Equality Commission and the gay community. Many Catholics as well as other Christians would like to know. Well, let's see if we can get Father Tim Bartlett on, actually, after 10 this morning.
Well, I would just say, just finish with saying,
apparently he's doing a mass with that. Well, let's get him on before 10. Can we get him on now, Vinny?
No,
Isn't that interesting? So Father Tim Bartlett he's withdrawing his engagement from people in the gay community.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, that's really interesting, Father Bartlett. So because of one test case, you're not engaging with any person now, gay groups, at all. Well, actually, he says, to those groups from the gay community, I'm withdrawing my engagement. So why on earth, Father Bartlett, would you completely now shun gay groups throughout Northern Ireland because of one test case from the Equality Commission? Is that a Christian message from the Catholic Church, that you're now going to shun all gay groups throughout Northern Ireland? Actually, that statement from Father Tim Bartlett to the Nolan Show this morning is a story in itself. There's the welcoming, open, inclusive Catholic Church in Northern Ireland now shunning every single gay group in Northern Ireland unless the Catholic Church gets its way. Really, really interesting territory, and a really interesting statement from Father Tim Bartlett this morning. I'll show you how strongly he feels and the church feels in this. What Father Bartlett, I just love him to come on the radio now, and no doubt he'll be pursued now by other people throughout the rest of the day, because there might actually, Father Bartlett, be gay people who agree with you that the church, or that Aisher's Bakery should not have to print this message, and yet you're shunning them and everyone else in a gay group. Really interesting territory. David McNary from the Ulster Unionist Party, just see this on the wires this morning. From UKIP. He's the leader of UKIP. What is this country coming to when a family business, he says, cannot have Christian values and is plunged in distress? The particular selective pursuit of Aishers by the Equality Commission is not acceptable, and its actions need to be investigated. Thomas in Island McGee. Hello, Thomas.
Hey, Stephen. I have to say, Stephen, it's actually unbelievable. This is reaching headline news. For once in my life, as I say, we're looking at 48 years, I have to agree with the politicians who all appear to be singing off the same hymn sheet. This is absolutely madness. If you want a cake, go and buy a cake. If you have a freedom of choice, you have a freedom of choice. If someone doesn't want to do something for you, they don't do it. It's as simple as. But I have to say, Stephen...
But that's not the law of the land.
Well, the law of the land...
That is not the law of the land. You cannot, if you say, and let me be ridiculous, but actually at one time in our history it wasn't ridiculous. When you say if someone wants to do something, they do it, and if they don't, they don't. There is obviously a need for the state to intervene in circumstances. You know the history throughout the world, for goodness sake. You know that there were once posters put up, no blacks allowed, etc., etc. Now, for goodness sake, you do know that we need a threshold below which we cannot tolerate just a free-for-all.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you in that aspect. However, if somebody doesn't want to do something, you can't force them to do it. It's as simple as... as I say, I think it was Mr. Alistair had pointed out at the start of the show, if I wanted a paramilitary cake baked, are they going to bake it? You have to get things put into priorities here. This is blown out of all proportions, and I have to agree with the rest of the people that's been on your show there this morning. Christian beliefs are just being destroyed.
Okay. Listen, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on.